Nantucket, Rhode Island. January 18, 1790. A raw winter wind off Narragansett Bay, the Blackstone River churning cold and dark through its rocky channel. And beside the roaring falls, a half-built wooden workshop where 2 years of American ambition have come to nothing. Inside, a young man in a coarse wool coat and patched boots circles the wreckage. He is 21 years old. He arrived in this country 3 months ago with no luggage worth mentioning, no papers, no credentials that anyone could verify, just the clothes of a common farm laborer and the accent of Derbyshire, England. His name is Samuel Slater. The American merchants watching him, men who have spent 2 years and considerable money trying to build spinning machinery that actually works, are running out of patience and out of hope. Their gears jam, their frames wobble, their thread snaps before it forms. Every attempt to reverse engineer Britain's industrial secret has produced the same result: expensive, useless junk. Slater circles the broken machinery once, twice. Then he stops. "These will not do," he says. "They are good for nothing in their present condition." Moses Brown, Quaker merchant, principal investor, a man not accustomed to being spoken to this way, fixes the young Englishman with a hard look. "Thee said thee could make machinery. Why not do it?" Slater meets his gaze without blinking. "Under my proposals, if I do not make as good yarn as they do in England, I will throw the whole of what I have attempted over the bridge." No blueprints, no drawings, no models hidden in a trunk, no documents of any kind. Just a young man's memory, carrying inside it every gear tooth, every spindle dimension, every water-driven mechanical secret of the most powerful industrial system on Earth. In that moment, standing beside a frozen Rhode Island river, the American Industrial Revolution was born not in a laboratory or a patent office, but in one man's mind. To understand what Samuel Slater was carrying, you have to understand what Britain had built. In the 1760s and 1770s, a series of inventions transformed the English textile industry so completely that historians still struggle to find words adequate to describe the scale of the change. James Hargreaves's spinning jenny, James Watt's steam engine, and above all, Richard Arkwright's water frame. The water frame was not merely a better spinning wheel. It was a system, water-powered machinery operating continuously, driven by rivers rather than human muscles, capable of producing thread faster and more uniformly than any hand could ever achieve. Combined with the factories Arkwright built to house it, centralized, disciplined, organized around the machine rather than the worker, it became the template for every industrial enterprise that followed. Britain's textile industry exploded. Production costs collapsed, exports surged. The British Empire, already powerful, became something new, an industrial superpower whose dominance rested not on armies or territory alone, but on the machines that manufactured the cloth that clothed the world. And Britain intended to keep it that way. Parliament passed laws of extraordinary strictness. No textile machinery could be exported. No drawings or models of that machinery could leave the country. And most critically, no skilled textile worker who understood the systems could emigrate. The penalty for violation was severe. Customs agents watched the ports, informers monitored the docks. The knowledge that powered Britain's wealth was to be kept inside Britain's borders permanently by force of law. America could grow the cotton, England would spin it, weave it, and sell it back at a profit. That was the arrangement, and Britain intended to enforce it. Samuel Slater was born in 1768 in Belper, Derbyshire, a county that had become the beating heart of the English textile revolution. His father was a farmer, a man of modest means who recognized early that his son had an unusual mind. When Slater's father died in a farming accident in 1782, the family made a decision that would change history. The 14-year-old Samuel was indentured to Jedediah Strutt, one of the most powerful mill owners in England, business partner to Richard Arkwright himself. Young Slater went to work in the shadow of the machines that were remaking the world. He was not an ordinary apprentice. Most workers in Strutt's mills learned one task and performed it for a lifetime. Slater learned everything. He worked his way through every department, every process, every system. By 19, he was overseeing the assembly of entire new mills. He understood not just how the machines operated, but how they were built. The precise tolerances, the exact gear ratios, The way the rollers drew fiber out to the correct thickness, the way the spindles twisted it tight, the way vibration had to be controlled or the thread would snap. He memorized it all, not casually, systematically, with the focused deliberation of a young man who had decided, somewhere in those years among the thundering machines, that this knowledge was his future. By the late 1780s, newspapers from America were circulating in England, smuggled, passed hand to hand, carrying extraordinary news. The new republic was offering bounties to anyone who could bring cotton machinery technology across the Atlantic. Hundreds of pounds, serious money, an invitation and a challenge. Slater read those papers. He understood what they meant. America had rivers. America had cotton. America had everything the Industrial Revolution needed except the knowledge of how to harness it. And that knowledge, every dimension, every motion, every secret of the system he had spent 7 years learning, lived inside Samuel Slater's head. On a September evening in 1789, the day his apprenticeship ended and he was legally free to go where he chose, Slater made his decision. He told no one, not his mother, not his brothers. He dressed as a common farm laborer. Nothing that would attract attention, nothing that betrayed what he knew. He slipped away to Liverpool in the night and booked passage on a ship bound for New York. If the customs agents at the docks had known who he was, if they had understood what he was carrying, he would have been arrested on the spot. They didn't know. He sailed, 66 days at sea, storms, sickness, the cramped misery of steerage passage, and the constant grinding anxiety of a man carrying a secret that an empire was actively trying to protect. There was nothing written down, nothing that could be found or confiscated. Everything existed only in his memory, and memory under enough stress, under enough time, begins to fray. Slater spent those 66 days doing what any engineer would do, reviewing, running through the systems in his mind. The carding engine that combed raw cotton into loose ropes, the drawing frames that stretched those ropes thinner, the roving frames that added the first twist, the spinning frames that finished the thread. Every step, every machine, every dimension, rehearsed and re-rehearsed in the dark of the North Atlantic. He landed in New York in November 1789, penniless, unknown, just another immigrant in a city full of them. But he had heard about Moses Brown. Moses Brown was a Quaker merchant from Providence, Rhode Island, serious, careful with money, and deeply frustrated. He and his partners had invested significant capital in an attempt to build water-powered spinning machinery. They had acquired some imported English parts. They had hired local blacksmiths and carpenters. They had produced machines that were, in Brown's own words, a complete failure. Slater wrote him a letter. Direct, almost audacious in its confidence. He had worked in the mills of England. He understood the machinery. He believed he could help. If Brown was interested, he would come to Providence. Brown replied. Slater walked the final miles to Pawtucket in the dead of winter, and on January 18, 1790, he stood in the workshop beside the Blackstone River and said the words that would define his life. "If I do not make as good yarn as they do in England, I will throw the whole of what I have attempted over the bridge." Brown agreed to the terms. The work began. For 10 weeks, Slater barely slept. He wrote nothing on paper. Too dangerous. If any document had been found and sent to England, the British government would have had legal grounds to demand his return. Everything existed only in his instructions, spoken aloud to the Rhode Island craftsman working beside him. Sylvanus Brown, the pattern maker. David Wilkinson, the iron worker. Men who had never seen an Arkwright mill, who had no framework for understanding what they were building, who had to trust completely in this young Englishman's direction. Slater walked them through every component, every cut, every alignment. When parts were wrong, and many were, because American tools and materials differed from English ones in ways that required constant improvisation, he recognized the error and corrected it. He was not reproducing a machine from a blueprint. He was reconstructing a system from understanding, which meant he could adapt, adjust, solve problems that a simple copyist would have been helpless to address. Slowly, the machines took shape. The carding engine, the drawing frames, the roving frames, the spinning frames, each one rebuilt from the architecture in his memory. each one assembled by American hands following the instructions of one young man who had memorized an empire's most closely guarded secret. On December 20th, 1790, the Blackstone River surged through the rebuilt raceway. The water wheel turned, the spindles began to whirl, and cotton, American cotton, grown in the fields of the South, emerged from the other end of the machine as strong, even, continuous thread. For the first time in the Western Hemisphere, water-powered machinery was spinning cotton. It worked. Within 3 years, the experimental workshop was replaced by a proper mill, 3 stories of sturdy timber and stone above the falls, the old Slater mill, which still stands today as a National Historic Landmark. And then it multiplied. Slater built more mills. He trained American mechanics in systems they had never seen. He imported English textile workers, families, not just individuals, to staff the expanding operations. He founded the village of Slatersville, a planned mill community that became a template for factory towns across New England. Other men took the model and ran with it. Francis Cabot Lowell, who would visit England himself and carry home his own industrial secrets, built an entire integrated mill system in Lowell, Massachusetts. Manchester, Lawrence, Waltham, mill cities rising along every river with sufficient flow to turn a water wheel. Before Slater, America was a nation of farmers and artisans, dependent on British cloth, vulnerable to British economic pressure. The Revolution had won political independence. It had not won industrial independence. Slater changed that. Within a generation, the hum of water wheels echoed up every river valley from Rhode Island to New Hampshire. Cotton mills multiplied. Textile towns became cities. Railroads followed the mills. Immigrants poured in to work them. The North's industrial capacity, built on the foundation Slater laid, would prove decisive when the nation split apart in 1861. Every factory that ever rose in America, every assembly line, every industrial job from steel to automobiles, every manufacturing city, every shift whistle at dawn, all of it traces back to one young man who memorized an empire's secret and carried it across 3,000 miles of ocean. Samuel Slater died in 1835, wealthy and honored, acknowledged across America as the father of the factory system. In England, they had another name for him, Slater the Traitor. He had taken the knowledge that made Britain powerful and given it to a rival nation. He had done what Parliament's laws were specifically designed to prevent. He had stolen, not machines, not drawings, not anything that could be seized at a customs inspection, but understanding itself. And understanding, it turned out, was the one thing that could not be stopped at the border. The Blackstone still flows past the old mill in Pawtucket today. The wheel no longer turns for profit, but the building stands, solid, quiet, enduring, a monument to the most consequential act of memorization in American history. He made as good yarn as they did in England. He kept his promise, and everything that followed, the roar of industry, the rise of cities, the transformation of a young republic into the most powerful manufacturing nation in human history, began the moment a 21-year-old in a patched coat looked at a broken machine beside a frozen river and said, "I know how to fix this." Next on Pivot Points, they came to watch it fail. They called it Fulton's Folly, the Devil's Sawmill, a machine too ugly and too loud to ever master a river that had ruled commerce for centuries. The engine coughed, the paddle wheels bit the water, the boat lurched forward and stopped dead in the river. The crowd laughed. Then the wheels churned again, and the Clermont surged upstream, steady, powerful, unstoppable, past every sailboat on the Hudson, as if they were standing still. The laughter died. Robert Fulton didn't just prove that steam could conquer water. He proved that a deal, the right partnership, at the right moment, could open an entire continent. Robert Fulton. Next on Pivot Points.